everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. This is the Super Bowl edition, and welcoming in nephew Caleb Lopes. What's up, Caleb?
What's up, Maurice? What's up, y'all?
Everything is going well as we are going to sit down and this morning and talk about Super Bowl 53. Quite an entertaining Super Bowl, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be joined by Antoine A.S. Stewart and Aaron Tutall more a little bit later on. We're also on RadioQDX.com out of Lucama, North Carolina, and also KCHF-TV 11 out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So getting down to the Super Bowl and its final results, the San Francisco 49ers go down to the Kansas City Chiefs, 25-22. It's one of the most exciting Super Bowls that we've ever seen. Okay, you could argue the most exciting Super Bowl that we've ever seen. Started out kind of slow, and then all of a sudden it started to build. The intensity started to build. We had Usher and his dancing and all of the, the juking and jiving that they did to turn up, the heat a little bit more. And then it came out in the second half and the game became quite compelling. And we ended up with an overtime game, for goodness sakes, before we knew what the heck happened. And the Kansas City Chiefs found a way to win, as only Patrick Mahomes can do it. And they won 25-22 over a very disheartened and disappointed San Francisco 49er team. Caleb, your thoughts on Super Bowl 53?
Like you said, it was one of the best Super Bowls I've ever seen. The best I've ever seen. But honestly, it was very unfortunate for San Francisco going down. They had a lot of kind of nicks and knacks during the game. As we saw, the really big loss of Dre Greenlaw by a real weird, just slip and fall. But honestly, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. They're a real lucky team. They have a really good quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. And, I came in this game expecting them to win. And they came out a little bit slow, but they got the job done, and they're back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
They're back-to-back Super Bowl champions, and I think now the conversation about Patrick Mahomes being the GOAT, Patrick Mahomes being, and the Kansas City Chiefs for that matter, a team that is a dynasty that maybe one day could even catch the New England Patriots and Patrick Mahomes catching Tom Brady. It's still a good ways out for him to do that and for the Chiefs to do that. But they're making a strong case right now. Your thoughts on that, Caleb?
Yeah, I feel like you said, he's not close yet. But if he keeps playing the way he's playing, going to AFC championships, going to Super Bowls as consistently as he has, he's been in, I think, 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls, or 4 of the last 5, something like that. And when you go to the Super Bowl that many times, you're bound to win. So, and he's already got 3 under his belt, and I feel like he's entering his prime right now, and he's got a lot to show us. So we better be on the lookout for Patrick Mahomes, and I really do think he might be able to catch Brady.
Yeah, I really do. He's only 28, and I think he's got a great shot to do that. I think a couple of years ago, it would have been a ridiculous conversation in my mind to have, but now it becomes plausible because the numbers that he's putting up right now are pretty darn incredible. I want to, and Antoine A.S. Stewart is a huge 49er fan who's not yet to join us at this point. Hopefully he will be joining us later on in the show. Hard pill to take. The 49ers had Jimmy Garoppolo in the same spot against the same Kansas City Chief team, not more than, my gosh, I guess it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And they came up a little bit short. Matter of fact, the 49ers should have won that game and found a way to lose it. And then 3 years later, maybe four, and they're in the same position with a different quarterback. This guy's name is Brock Purdy. And a lot of people felt like he was just a game manager, couldn't get it. Not an elite quarterback. He's just a guy that manages the game well. But if you look at Jimmy Garoppolo and you look at Brock Purdy, the only difference that I can see between the two is you don't get the hijinks mistakes with Purdy that you did get with Garoppolo. But they both made it to the Super Bowl. Your opinion of those two quarterbacks, how would you compare those two?
Like you said, they both made it to the Super Bowl. They both so far have basically had the same career path almost. And uh Purdy, like you said, I do have a little bit more trust in Purdy. I feel like he's a more accurate, more reliable quarterback. But he's going to have to show us a little bit more so he can get off of these allegations of being just the next Jimmy Garoppolo or just a game manager. So, but I do believe in him. He does seem like a great kid, great quarterback, and he did make it to the Super Bowl, and he was this close to beating Patrick Mahomes. So we have to give him props for that.
Well, we do have to give him props for that. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about or in depth about Brock Purdy in just a few moments. But I want to also now switch over to Patrick Mahomes again and talking about him being he's obviously the GOAT of today, but the GOAT of GOATs is, as far as quarterbacks go, well, that still remains to be seen. But I do want to pose this question. Is Patrick Mahomes, in your mind, Caleb, closer to catching Tom Brady than LeBron James to Michael Jordan?
Uh, you know, I think I might have to say yes, just
Okay.
because I feel like LeBron, he's had his chance, and in my eyes, his career is almost over. I doubt he's gonna get any more rings or any more MVPs. He said he's had a really long career to do it, and I don't think he caught Mike yet. He's not like Mike,
Yeah.
but uh, Patrick Mahomes, like I said earlier, he's entering his prime, and he already has 3 Super Bowls. I'm not saying that he can catch Tom Brady, that he will, because I feel like Tom Brady is one and only, but he really has a chance. And to me, I think Patrick Mahomes is in that GOAT room already with Montana, with Young, with Dan Marino, all them. I think he's in that room, but he hasn't caught Brady yet.
No, he hasn't, and I would have to say that he's technically not as close to Brady as LeBron is to Jordan, but I think realistically he is, because I don't see LeBron winning another championship.
Yeah.
I think he's done, but Patrick is not. I do not foresee Patrick Mahomes being done by any stretch of the imagination. But I thought I would throw that question out because it is GOAT talk. It is GOAT conversation. And as you accurately stated, Patrick is in that GOAT room, with your Montanas and guys that, have really laid the groundwork as being, great championship winning quarterbacks. You can even throw a guy like Terry Bradshaw from the 70s in there. He's got 4 championships. Troy Aikman's got 3 championships. Roger Staubach's got a couple. Bob Greasy's got 3 if you go back in the day. John Elway's got a couple. There are guys out there that you can throw that are in the GOAT room that Patrick is certainly welcomed to come on in and have a seat. What do you want? Coffee or tea? You want donuts? Have a seat, Patrick. So he's in that GOAT room, no question about that. As we break down the headlines from the Super Bowl and the NFL, I want to throw this question out. We looked at the 49ers, and I certainly wish Antoine A.S. Stewart were here to address this question. And this question I'm going to throw out, I think, is a plausible question because you look at what the 49ers have been able to do since Kyle Shanahan has been their head coach. How do the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan look after not knowing, according to the players or a few players on the 49ers team, the overtime rules?
I mean, it's ugly. It's not something you want to see from the best coach team in the NFL.
Yeah.
And to have your star players like Juszczyk, a few others on defense, I forgot names, but almost that entire locker room on the post game, they were saying, "Oh, I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the rules." That doesn't make up for it, and it's not a good look. You're the ones out there on the field supposed to be playing, supposed to be knowing uh, everything you're supposed to know, and Kyle Shanahan is supposed to be teaching them what they need to know to go out there and play their best game. And clearly, after that one, I don't think he is, and we may have given him a little bit too much of credit because of his family name, because of the family name Shanahan.
Right. Right. Yeah. I wanted to get back to some things with Kyle Shanahan a little bit later. And again, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show, Super Bowl edition on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks. How realistic is it for the Chiefs to pull off a third Super Bowl title to complete what they call a three-peat?
Man, this year, all the odds are stacked up against them, right? They were all the receivers. Everybody was saying, "Oh, that receiving room's so horrible. They can't do anything in the playoffs with that." Oh, I don't really. They didn't have a great season. Patrick Mahomes didn't put up the numbers we're used to putting him up, and he still had a great season, no doubt. He went out and won the Super Bowl, and they did that on a not so great team, not having the roster that they're used to having. And so, I mean, it's really plausible. I wouldn't be so surprised if they did it. But the AFC especially is looking really stacked right now. A lot of new QBs coming in. I feel like uh the Chargers getting that new head coach was Jim Harbaugh. That I feel like that division is going to be a little bit harder for them now, and it's going to be more of a struggle because people are going to be wanting their heads. When you keep winning a lot, everybody wants to beat you, and they are going to have a target on their back, so they're going to have to be playing good football all 18 games of the season, and if they do want a three-peat.
I think winning three is one of the toughest asks that you can have in any professional sport. Winning three in a row, as good as the Chiefs are, even for them, it's hard to imagine them pulling that off. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the Chiefs a little bit later on, as far as their path, their road back to the Super Bowl and winning the whole thing, because I think there's some impediments in their path in getting that to happen. Matter of fact, I'll just jump right to it and bring in the LA Chargers here. And the question I have about these guys is, are the LA Chargers an immediate Super Bowl favorite with the hiring of Jim Harbaugh?
I mean, they definitely jump up. That catches your eye. Jim Harbaugh, he just came off of winning the college football playoffs. And it is a big jump from college football to the NFL. But I feel like he is going to do a good job with the Chargers. It definitely changes their coaching situation. And I personally think Justin Herbert, he's the true fat quarterback for them. He's a great quarterback. His motions are good. And I think if they can polish up that wide receiver room, which was looking pretty bad this season, I think they could really make a run for the Super Bowl. But we're gonna have to see.
Well, the one thing we have to remember about Jim Harbaugh is he spent very successful years in the NFL with the 49ers. And matter of fact, he went to Super Bowl with the 49ers, and they came up a little short against the Baltimore Ravens in 2012. So I look at Jim Harbaugh, and then his tenure in college speaks for itself. I mean, winning season for 6 maybe straight years at Michigan, national title, and he's got Justin Herbert waiting for him when he gets to Los Angeles. And I think as the no, I'm not going to say casual. The typical NFL fan has always, in my mind, I know for myself, looked at the Chargers with Justin Herbert, and you go, they're a problem.
Yeah,
they could be a huge problem, but somehow, some way, they've always found a way to not get it done. And I think we all realize that's mostly because of Brandon Staley, who was a guy that was the bad version of Dan Campbell in Los Angeles, where he's always doing, going for it on these fourth downs, using analytics and going against what, most people would not advise. And they paid the price for it, and so you go, okay, Staley, you got to go. Now you bring in a guy like Jim Harbaugh. Okay. You bring in Jim Harbaugh, who's got a great tenure, college or pro, and he seems to be, quite frankly and honestly, a quarterback whisperer. Okay, you look at the fact that he had at the time, Alex Smith, when he was in San Francisco, who was not a highly regarded quarterback until Harbaugh got there. Then he had Colin Kaepernick in the Super Bowl, and we found out without Jim Harbaugh, he's pretty bad. Colin Kaepernick is just bad. So for him to do what he did with Colin Kaepernick, amazing. You look at Colin Kaepernick and everyone goes, and I've always said this about Kaepernick because everyone wants to talk about the fact that, him taking a knee is what, ended his football career. No, he just sucked. He wasn't a good football player. That's what ended his football career. Believe you me, if Colin Kaepernick had any game, he'd be in the NFL right now. So you just got to go back and look at what Jim Harbaugh did with him. And it's like, wow, okay, now you go to college. He gets this kid a national championship. He has not coached one NFL quarterback since he's been at Michigan. And the kid that won the national championship this year is not an NFL quarterback as far as I'm concerned. I don't remember his name. I think it's JT something. I don't remember his name.
JJ McCarthy, I think.
JJ McCarthy. Good kid. Nice kid. Okay. Put him in the Beatles or something. Maybe he can play with the Beatles and start the new Beatles. I don't know. But as a quarterback in the NFL, I don't see it. Jim Harbaugh is a quarterback whisperer. And guess what? Now he's getting ready to have, I would fancy to believe, go out on a limb and say he's about to get the first legitimate quarterback he's ever coached.
Honestly, yeah. You could say that and no one's arguing because after the list of names you just put out, that's a great take. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and I think that now Justin Herbert, and I'll be honest with you, and I've said this before on this program in the past, whenever I look at Justin Herbert, I see like a great quarterback. I see a guy that's great in the pocket, got a rifle arm, he's athletic. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
And from an eye candy standpoint, playing that position, Justin Herbert is as good as it gets. Okay. In fact, I've called him an Aaron Rodgers type player. I've called him a modern day Dan Marino.
Yeah.
Now he's got a coach. And so I look at the Chargers and I'm thinking they could beat the Chiefs with Harbaugh at coach.
They really could.
They've got Khalil Mack. They've got Bosa. They've got Eckler at running back. They've got a wealth of wide receivers. I mean,
Yeah.
all they needed was a guy that knew how to coach them. I'm telling
Exactly.
you right now, I think the LA Chargers are a Super Bowl favorite.
I ain't arguing. If Jim Harbaugh can go in there and work his magic with that team, they have all the pieces. Now he just has to build the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Harbaugh and his career, he's a guy that is able to get the most out of his players. I mean, I just like, and a lot of people don't like Harbaugh, and I think I've kind of noticed. I can't prove it. I always get the vibe and the feeling that the coaching community is offended by Harbaugh.
Yeah.
And it's, if you know what I'm saying, it's like there's a lot of haterade out there about Jim and
Yeah.
college and pro. I mean, we saw what happened in college with the sign stealing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll be totally honest with you with the sign stealing. I don't want to hear it. Everybody steals signs. I don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
From little league to pro, and it baseball, football, hockey. If they, I don't know if they do signs in hockey. If they do, they steal them.
Yeah.
In basketball, I know there are no signs in basketball, but I tell you one thing: the old adage is, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's part of the American fabric of sports. So for him to
Yeah.
get in trouble because he was sign stealing, like it was this huge atrocity of atrocities, I think is utterly ridiculous. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that people simply don't like Harbaugh.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and, I mean, you can go back to Bill Belichick's days when he was supposedly Spygate, and they were spying on practices. Of course, he was spying on the practices. All the coaches find a way to spy. I want to hear it. Utterly ridiculous. Anyway, so that being said, I am not a Charger fan. I'm not a Harbaugh fan. I'm a fan of the game. And I when I see someone that's really good, I got to give them their props.
Yeah.
I don't see any real strong criticisms or negatives about Jim Harbaugh. And he walked into a great situation in Los Angeles, and he came out and said, he's already said it, that he's, I think I forget exactly how he worded this, but it was something along the lines of, I think I got a Super Bowl team.
He
Okay.
does.
And he does. He does. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show, Super Bowl edition on Bog Radio, talking with my nephew, Caleb Lopes, who is a field goal kicker on the number one AAU team in the country down in Port St. Lucie, Florida, the Treasure Coast Patriots, and also an honor student, 4.0 student in school, heading to high school with the hope and anticipation of being the starting field goal kicker for his high school. But he's got to finish the 8th grade first, ladies and gentlemen. But when he gets there, I fully expect that Caleb will be there. We're going to get back to our headlines as we're doing our Super Bowl NFL headlines here. And we're talking about Tom Brady being the GOAT. We talked a little bit about Kyle Shanahan. We talked about the Chiefs three-peating. The 49ers did something I thought was really uncool a couple of days ago, and they fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. Did the 49ers make the right decision, Caleb, in your mind, in parting ways with Steve Wilks?
No, not at all. It's another instance of an offensive or defensive coordinator in this instance being a scapegoat for a bad game, a bad head coaching job or calls in a really important game like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan is a bad head coach, but he really didn't show that he was a great one during Super Bowl 58. But Steve Wilkes, he was a scapegoat for that, and I really don't like that. It it doesn't make sense from the 49ers standpoint. Uh, I feel like he did a pretty decent job with that 49ers team. The 49ers defense, I feel like, kept them in that game in the first place. Uh, the second half of the Super Bowl, it I think the offense, they only scored 2 field goals or one touchdown, and the extra point got blocked,
Yeah.
and that's what lost them the game. They couldn't score at all during the second half, and then you go out there and fire your defensive coordinator for offensive problems. That doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, the 49ers, they're gonna see. I want to see who they hire for next year, and I don't I don't agree with this decision at all.
Well, I think we got to call it what it is. He was made a scapegoat. Okay, he was scapegoated. Okay, Steve Wilkes did not deserve to be terminated, as far as I'm concerned. I thought he did an excellent job, a bang up job as the DC. Whereas there's some leakage with the 49er defense this year. They had they had moments where there was leakage. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of the year when they started losing bodies and they lost a few games, they went and I tell you right now, the 49ers talk more junk than anybody I've ever seen in my life. You talk about a bunch of trash talking dudes with not a ring to show for it. It's the San Francisco 49ers.
Looking like the
And
Cowboys.
well, they're just as bad as the Cowboys. I mean, I don't think it can get worse than the Cowboys, but they're up there with them. And they talk a bunch of trash, dude. And they started the year out 5-0. And I'm in Texas, and I heard them from San Francisco. I heard them all the way here in Austin, all the trash talk come out of California. And then all of a sudden they start losing a couple of bodies, and they lost 3 in a row. I think they lost Trent Williams. They lost Bosa for a quick period of time. They lost McCaffrey. They lost Debo during that time frame, and they went on a 3-game losing streak. And then all of a sudden, that's when the complaints about Steve Wilkes arose. Now, keep in mind, they were 5-0 at this point before the losses piled up. And now it's Steve Wilkes' fault. Yeah, we don't get Steve. Last year, we kind of were a family here. We kind of understood how we wanted to do things. And, we just don't quite get Steve. You didn't say that when you were 5-0.
Yeah.
Okay, now he's a problem. Okay, and then all of a sudden they patch some things up and they go on a run and you get into the Super Bowl and you lose and it was Steve Wilkes. He has to go. And I don't have any respect for that kind of decision making at all. And it makes me dislike the 49ers now. Because before I didn't really have a problem with them. I gave them their props. They are an excellent team. They did show leakage though throughout the year. And let's be honest here. The Packers and Lions should have beaten them both. The Packers and Lions both should have sent them back to the Bay Area to watch the Super Bowl from their cribs.
Yeah.
That's what they should have done. That's where they should have been. And they found a way to get to it. And you could say, okay, look, Steve, you may have to take some responsibility for the fact that I think the Packers put up over 149 yards on you at the 130. The Lions over 150 yards on you on the ground. I mean, they were gashed defensively. And I'm just going, wow. But then you look at the Super Bowl, and I don't think the Chiefs ran all over the 49ers. I think that the defense showed up. They made it life very difficult for Patrick Mahomes. You had Travis Kelce bumping Andy Reid because of his own frustration. And so, the argument to me that Steve Wilkes is the problem is bogus.
Yep.
And the last thing you do is fire that man. He's been there all year. He got you to the Super Bowl. And I just think you have to start looking around at, and I have my own theory about why the 49ers went out in this particular game. Number one, I mean, it was Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
There's no shame in losing to Patrick Mahomes. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy is going to go down as one of the best we've ever seen. But I have another question as we talk about all this stuff and Steve Wilkes getting fired and the 49ers losing for the second time with a different quarterback. Here's my question. Is Kyle Shanahan starting to look like a coach that shrivels in big games? And we can go back to his OC post with the Atlanta Falcons when they
Yeah.
lost in 20, I believe it was 17. Is Kyle Shanahan starting to look like a guy that shrivels in big games? Caleb, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean exactly what you said. A lot of us forget about what happened to the Falcons, and he was there. Uh, what happened 4 years ago against the Chiefs? He was there, 10. What happened a week ago during the Super Bowl? He was there, up 10, going to half, and it's really starting to pile up. You can't lose three Super Bowls, all three Super Bowls that I think he's been to, he was up by 10 or more, and he loses. And that looks real bad on your record. And it until he proves me that he doesn't shrivel in a big game, I'm gonna say yeah. Cause that's what he's shown us.
I,
Uh
I yeah.
so yeah, go on.
No, I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. I mean, since we're in the business of scapegoating, it's Kyle Shanahan's fault.
Yeah.
You're the problem. And I think we have enough evidence to conclude the problems with the big guy, the guy that's the head coach. It's
Yeah.
always the head coach. And when guys underneath the head coach get fired, like an OC or a DC or a special teams coach, they're the scapegoats for the real problem, which is the head guy. And eventually, if things don't improve, they get around to him. Now, you look at Kyle Shanahan's record, there's not a whole lot you can say that would, warrant his termination. The guy's a great coach. He's a great play caller.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we just start assigning blame, I'm going to give it to Kyle Shanahan. Okay, we've seen this show and this act before. We've seen this. Go all the way back to 2017. You're up 28-3 in the third quarter, and you, the offensive coordinator, find a way to lose the game. You did it again with the 49ers 4 years ago when you had Jimmy Garoppolo, and you did it this time again with Brock Purdy. Okay, your play calling shrivels under the big lights. And I'll go a step further and go back to the regular season when we had the so-called Super Bowl before the Super Bowl, when the Baltimore Ravens came to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And that was a time when you pretty much thought the 49ers were unbeatable, especially in San Francisco, and they were manhandled.
Yeah.
They were manhandled. Kyle Shanahan, he likes to think of himself as this exotic play caller. What are you, a supermodel?
Yeah.
Dude, give me a daggone break. Calm down and just call the game. And that thing got away from him, and the Ravens came in there and they rearranged their furniture. So I really hate it for Steve Wilkes is really my point here. I hate to see an African-American coach in particular get jobbed, or, pardoning the pun, get his job taken. I mean, you go back to Carolina. He's a head coach in Carolina for the Panthers, and he had come in on an interim basis after Matt Rule was terminated, and he won 5 out of the last 6 games, and they let him go. And now the Panthers barely won 1 game all year.
Yeah.
And then you get Steve Wilkes, and he does another fine job, and he gets fired. So I don't like it. It just rankles my feathers, as you can obviously see and tell. I don't like that stuff. And then I just have to go, if we're gonna get into the business of finger pointing, I'm looking at Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah. You got to go straight to the. He's the leader. It goes quarterback and head coach, and I feel like Brock Purdy did all he could, but the play calling just wasn't there. Uh, I just after things kind of started getting tough when KC tied it up, they should
Yeah.
have started pounding the rock like they were beginning of the game with Christian McCaffrey, CMC. He's I'm gonna say the best uh, running back in the league, and Shanahan he didn't use him practically the entire third and fourth quarter,
Well,
and it
no,
was
he
just
didn't.
like it was basically like that entire sideline broke down, and it starts with the head coach and the quarterback. So
There are so many things that I could say. And again, I'm not in the business of, pointing fingers at teams and demeaning teams. But I tell you, when you start uh, scapegoating people, then it makes me look at it in a different way. I mean, I've never seen so many guys get injured as the 49ers. I
yeah,
mean, it's an ongoing theme with this team. Okay, and all year long, and then even into the Super Bowl. I mean, you had Debo Samuel's wallowing on the ground. Oh, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. You got to go look at him and see if he's okay. Then you
yeah,
get Dre
God,
Greenlaw. He can't even run onto the field without hurting himself. Tears his Achilles tendon. He's done. Huge too for the on that linebacking core. He's gone. And then you
yeah,
look at George Kittle's on that last drive there. He had to go run to the bathroom. I don't know if he had diarrhea or I don't know what's going on with him. Hey, George, hurry up in there. We got a game to finish. And so you just look at the hijinks with the 49ers. There's always an excuse with them. And this stuff about overtime, I don't want to hear that stuff about we didn't know what the overtime rules were. I don't want to hear it. As a matter of fact, if that were the case, I wouldn't tell anybody. I wouldn't tell anybody. Okay, I would go home and I would tell my wife and kids, "Don't let this out." But we didn't know the overtime rules. It would stay right there.
yeah.
So there's always an excuse with the 49ers. It's just that simple, and it gets old. And saying all of that, it leads me to my next headline question, and that's this: can the 49ers get back to the Super Bowl next year?
No, next year, nah. Uh, and I don't think in the next three, four, 3, 4 years, no. Uh, and it's gonna be hard for them because they have a lot of people to pay. They're gonna have to pay Brock Purdy. They're gonna have to pay, I'm pretty sure, Brandon Ayuk. That defense, a lot of people in that defense are gonna have to get paid. And they built that superstar team and they still couldn't get it done. Well, I remember when the Rams built that superstar team, putting everybody on a 1 year contract, they went and got it done. But the
Yeah.
49ers couldn't finish their job when when the lights shine brightest. And I don't think they're going to be coming back to the Super Bowl for a good minute. And they're going to have to go on a pretty big rebuild.
Well, and as you say all of that, it leads me to the next headline, and it makes me go: are the Lions, Cowboys, Rams, Eagles, Vikings, and even the Packers legitimate Super Bowl contenders in the NFC?
The NFC is looking pretty pretty weird right now. and
Yeah,
but honestly, the Cowboys, I think we can already throw them out of there.
yeah,
I won't believe it till I see it.
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
I feel like the Rams, uh, the Lions, the Vikings, and Packers. I'm really liking the Vikings if they can go out and get uh, Kirk Cousins again
yeah,
and maybe get a nice little draft pick and put a rookie under Kirk's wing, train him up, they're going to have a future.
yeah.
And they
I
could
believe that.
really even make a run to the championship game this year or next year. And the Packers, one of the youngest teams in the NFL. Your team, they're looking real good too. And the
Yeah.
Lions, what Dan Campbell is doing over there, he really rebuilt that team. I feel like the NFC, they have some good teams. Uh they're gonna pose a threat again to the AFC. It's starting to some of the NFC teams are starting to look scary.
Yeah, I think so, and I do agree with you. I think you have to throw the Cowboys out. I mean, honestly, they have a lot to prove, and I think the Eagles have to be thrown out as well. The way they ended last year was pretty bad, and I don't even. And the reason I say that is they ended in such a way where you wonder if they can recover from it,
Yeah,
because you were looking at a stalwart championship caliber team through much of the first half of the season, at least first 10, 11 weeks. And then all of a sudden they started to implode, which looks like there was some personality clashes going on there, whether it be amongst the players or the coaches or, both. No one really knows but those guys in that locker room. But it didn't look like it was a competition problem they were having on the field. It looked like it was internal. And sometimes those things are irreparable. And so you just go, I don't know how the Eagles are going to fix that. They got a lot of fixing to do, though. I think that's a spiritual situation and not an athletic or physical deal. Something's going on mentally with that team. They checked out. The Eagles simply checked out. So I don't know if they can recover. And then you just look at the Lions, the Rams. The Rams, I actually think, are going to be a problem because they had some injuries they were dealing with last season, and now what's the kid's name from the Lion King? Puka.
Puka.
Uh, yeah, and Cooper Cup, and of course Stafford, big, healthy, got great defense. I think the Rams are going to have a lot to say, and as you said, the Vikings with the healthy Kirk Cousins coming back, they've got talent on the team. We know what they can do. And then the Packers finishing the way that they did kind of gave us maybe a sneak peek at what perhaps we may be seeing going forward from them. And then, of course, the Lions. And so for the 49ers to think that they're just going to waltz through the NFC again this year and go to the Super Bowl, I don't think is realistic.
Yeah, it's not. It's not going to roll like that again for them.
No, I just don't think that's realistic. And again, I have to say this. They were lucky to be even in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So they had their shot and they just blew it. You blew it, man. Okay, you made some mistakes. Just eat that. Okay, just eat it. It's the excuses that make you not want to hear anything from a team.
Yeah, don't try to blame it on other people. Don't try to blame it on coaches. I didn't know the rules. Blah 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 blah. Sounding like a first grader.
There it is, Caleb. I love it. Yes, sir. 100%. Let's keep moving with our Super Bowl headlines here. And I want to talk about Brock Purdy because I don't think he's a culprit here.
No.
Is it time to stop criticizing Brock and consider him an elite quarterback?
Brock Purdy, he played his heart out, and it wasn't enough. And I don't think anyone's blaming him for what happened. And I'm not going to put him at an elite quarterback yet, but if he keeps playing with or without the 49ers, because if they don't re-sign him, I feel like another team will. And I think he can climb to that elite quarterback status. He's definitely not a game manager anymore. I don't want to hear any of that, but he still has a little bit to prove to me, but he's definitely getting there.
I think one of the saddest commentaries on Brock Purdy is tagging him with the game manager tag and disregarding his ability as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest knock on him is being Mr. Irrelevant, being the last player selected in the NFL draft. Okay, let's understand something. This is the NFL. These are the best players in the world. So
Yeah.
if you were the last one picked, you're still one of the best players in the world. So for people to criticize that, I think is ridiculous. I remember Purdy as a quarterback at Iowa State in college. He's a good quarterback. I remember him as a college quarterback. He's pretty good. And so for people to criticize him and to say the negative things that they've said about Brock, I think is pretty unfair. I think he's earned the right to be called a good quarterback and not a game manager. I think at the
Yeah.
beginning they had so much eye candy around him that the tendency to go with game manager was a knee-jerk reaction, plausible, and I get it. But after a while, you started to look at the guy, and then you can make a judgment that this guy's good.
Yeah.
And so I hope that people will stop criticizing him. And my last headline of the evening, I mean, headline show, no order of a show called the headlines is not an order of a show with headlines without a couple of jokes about the Commanders. Well, it's not really a joke. But here's the question. Is Dan Quinn, who was just hired a few days ago, the answer for the Washington Commanders?
Man, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of like a desperation hire. They needed
Okay.
someone, and I feel like he was the last one on the board
Yeah.
to, and no one really wanted to go to the Commanders. No one wants to have to completely rebuild a team.
Right.
And I'm not saying that Dan Quinn is a bad coach, but I wouldn't say he's a great one either. And I think the Commanders are really like stuck in this cycle where it's just we're gonna have a head coach. He might play good, but most likely he's gonna be bad. We'll keep him here for like 4 years, and then we're gonna have to find someone new.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been at for the past what, like 20 years. And Dan Quinn might be the answer, but most likely I would say no.
So you look at Dan Quinn, and he's an oddity to me. I mean, you go back to the 2017 Super Bowl where the debacle occurred with Kyle Shanahan as offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons, and Dan Quinn was the head coach. And I don't think that's something he's ever going to live down. And then you go and look at Dan Quinn, the DC for the Cowboys. You know, I don't. I mean, you can leave a burning building. Doesn't mean you're going to live down the fact that you may have started the fire.
Yeah.
Because the way the Packers ran through those dudes, man, and you're lining up safeties at linebacker. Now you become a laughing stock. Okay.
Yeah.
And so now you go to the Washington Commanders, and you're being asked to turn a losing, for all intents and purposes, a losing franchise into a winner. Now, Dan Quinn's record is pretty good. I mean, he's not a bum,
Yeah.
but there are hijinks with Dan Quinn as a coach, and so you go, can this guy really fix the Commander? I think that he'll go in there and he'll get them winning. But to
Yeah.
make them a real legitimate threat, you have to wonder if Dan Quinn has the goods to do that. But it's certainly a question worth throwing out there. I had a couple of more headlines that I wanted to get into. We're not going to have time. So before we get out of here, going into the new season, and we'll do an NFL pre-draft show here in a couple of weeks. And we may also do one more post 2024 show with Stu and Aaron Tutall Moore. But the Power Five going into next year from the AFC, I have the Chiefs at number one, followed by the Ravens, the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh now at the helm, Buffalo, and Cincinnati. Your thoughts?
Oh, one thing about Cincinnati, I don't know. I I feel like I've started kind of to have a little bit of doubts about that team.
Okay.
It's they got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, I think it was, and they played decent football. But since then, they really haven't been. They've been having an injury bug, and we haven't seen much from them.
Right.
And but when they have all their pieces, they do seem like a good team. But I'm gonna have to put. I think I'm gonna put C.J. Stroud and the Texans over them starting out. And so, other than that, I'd have to agree with your list.
Yeah, I think when you look at Cincinnati, I think Joe Burrow was his injuries got in the way and kind of marred their year. I think if he's healthy and if he can stay healthy, guy's got ice water in his veins.
Yeah, he
I mean,
does.
Joe Burrow is a problem. So I'm just kind of thinking if he's healthy, I might go with the Bengals, although you can't miss with CJ Stroud and the Texans at all. I look at the NFC and the Power Five. For now, I've got the 49ers remaining at number one. They did make it to the Super Bowl, and they've got everybody coming back. So from a lineup standpoint, what's on paper, they're one, followed by the Lions. I've got the Rams at three, followed by the Packers. And I just threw the Cowboys up there simply because there's not really any. But I could replace them with the Vikings. But anyway, your view of this NFC Power Five.
Uh, I'll take it. There a lot of these teams, especially the 49ers, they have to prove to me next season that they can be that they deserve the number one spot in the NFC. After losing the Super Bowl, a team always has to reprove themselves, and that's what the 49ers have to do to me. So uh, I'd still have to agree with this list. I might switch out the Cowboys with the Vikings. We'll put them both at five. We'll do that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
but yeah, I like this list.
Yeah, I think you could, put the Cowboys and Vikings both at five. The thing about Kirk Cousins and the Vikings, like they're a problem, and I think they're going to win a lot of games. I think the problem with Minnesota is they have kind of not the Vikings, but Kirk Cousins as the leader, an implosion problem.
Yeah.
When the lights are brightest, don't count on Kirk. And so you just kind of look at them from that standpoint where it's like, yeah, there probably would be a tie between the Cowboys and Vikings. And now for the NFL, for the entire league, I've got the Chiefs at number one, followed by the Ravens, followed by the Chargers, staying in the AFC. And then I bring in the 49ers at four and Buffalo at five. Your thoughts?
I like that. Uh, I had to agree with this list. Those are the top teams I think coming into next year. Mm. I think I might flip around the 49ers and Chargers.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, I'm good with that list.
And so as we wrap up the show, let's throw out, a crazy, way too early for Super Bowl prediction segment. And I've got going into next year's Super Bowl, the Chargers and the Rams. I feel like Jim Harbaugh with Justin Herbert is going to break through right now. And I got the LA Rams. I just think that they're going to be healthy. I think when the Rams are healthy and they got everything going, I think they're the best. They're going to be a Super Bowl representative. I got the Rams and Chargers in the Super Bowl for next year. Your thoughts?
Uh, I like your picks. Los Angeles gonna be happy if that happens, but
There's no doubt about that.
uh, I think I'm gonna take the Ravens for the AFC. I feel like Lamar is gonna come back. He's gonna come back angry. He's gonna come back wanting one. And for the NFC, uh, we'll throw in the Packers.
I
I
love it.
really like
Thanks,
them this season. I really
man.
do.
Caleb, I love it. Thank you, dude.
I really like them this season. And Jordan Love, if he goes out, plays balls out the whole season, he's going to be a problem. And I think they really have a chance to make it to the Super Bowl next year.
Well, as a Packer fan, I think the most frustrating thing about last year's run was losing to the 49ers. I mean,
Yeah.
I have not been a big proponent of my boys. I just kind of like tossed them aside, said, well, we'll finish the year, we'll get what we'll get. And then I allowed myself to think, we're going to beat the 49ers. We're going to win. And so obviously that didn't happen. But I think the fact that it was there for the taking says a lot about what the Packers have.
Yeah.
Their youth showed up when the lights got brightest, which you can expect a young team to do. A young quarterback like Jordan Love throwing across his body on a potential game-winning drive and throwing a pick. I mean, that was his first pick in like 10 games versus
Yeah. So
21 TDs, I think. Sick, just sick. So, and Aaron Jones and the defense getting better. They're going to bring in a new defensive coordinator, all those different things. I don't have a problem with that. I certainly will be hoping and rooting for the Packers with everything I got to get there. And that's why I say the 49ers are not going to have a cakewalk, because they're going to have to deal with the Packers next year. They're going to have to deal with the Lions, and they're going to have to deal with the Rams. They're going to have a tough road next year if they think they're just going to waltz themselves back to the Super Bowl. They're going to have some tough teams to have to deal with next year. It's just that simple. I think you're right about the NFC starting to now look like it's getting to a point where it could rival the AFC with potential Super Bowl teams. Man, there's so much more, Caleb, I could say on this show, dude. But we got to wrap this thing up, because I could go on for another hour about some of these folks. I didn't get around to talk about everybody I want to talk about. Hey, Caleb, I didn't get around throwing as much mud as I wanted to throw. I had some more mud to sling. Anyway, we're going to get out of here on that note. And, folks, we'll try to get back next week with Antoine A.S. Stewart and Aaron Too Tall Moore. And also, we're going to do a pre-draft, NFL pre-draft show as well in the next coming weeks as we get ready for the draft in April. So everybody be safe. Good morning to everybody. Thanks for hanging out with a cup of coffee with us this morning and talking NFL. Caleb, you take care of yourself and keep getting great grades in school. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, my nephew Caleb is on track to be the starting kicker in high school next year, and he's a 4.0 student. It just doesn't get any better. Caleb, keep doing your thing, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family, cuz. See you next week.
Thanks. See you next week.